never heard of. Hey everybody, welcome to the Common Folk Podcast with Ben, Morgan, and Andy.
Welcome back to Common Folk.
The Common Folk Podcast, the podcast for the people, by the people.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Are you just waiting to crack that?
Yeah.
Must be an evening recording.
Yes, sir. Yeah, this isn't a morning recording. After 5.
Because you'd be drinking your coffee.
Yep. One of my 4 cups.
Yeah, you're 4.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned that, now I'm like counting it through the day. I'm like, all right.
You are?
I'm like, this is number 4. I better shut it down.
Because I think you told me you only drink 2.
No, I said 4.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I'm right at 4 or 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Do you drink coffee over there?
I just had a iced coffee at DJ's. They don't sell it, but she got a cup of coffee and a glass of ice and about 4 sweet and lows and 3 creamers. I drank that.
Okay.
I get up way too early, so this is like I'm starting to wind down.
So this is bedtime.
This is late for me. This is
Okay.
starting to get late.
And this guy waves a big stick, so it's no surprise that he shows up at a place and goes, I don't see this on your menu. Would you just go back there and make it for me? No.
She was very, very sweet to do it for me. She was very sweet.
But this is kind of special for me because, I'm a sports guy.
Yep.
And this is Michael Severe we have on the podcast. And we have you on for a couple of different reasons. We want to get into the Jet Award. But for people that don't know, you've been on local talk radio, what'd you say, for over 30 years now?
I've been in the business, just media in general, for 30 years this year. But I did radio at The Zone and the paper in The Zone starting in 2004. So it'll be 20 years next year that I've done some form of radio in Nebraska.
And are you going to, because you're hosting Big Red Wrap-Up.
Yep.
You're going
my
to come
fourth
back?
year coming up.
Awesome.
Yep, fourth year of hosting Big Red Wrap Up.
I always like that program.
It's like 8 total wins, I think, since I've been hosting.
Yeah, you're pretty rough on it. No, but
You're not counting.
Kevin Kugler was he was just
20 years. Kevin
did
did
he
it.
was awesome.
Kevin did it for 20.
Spectacular.
Kevin and I worked together for 10.
Yep.
On The Zone on Sportsmanlike Conduct, and he's a big star now.
Oh, he is.
Fox Sports.
What do you call him? The voice of everything.
He literally is.
Yeah, I know.
He is. He's the voice of a universe, really.
Yeah. And now one of your newer positions, you've worked for the Jet Foundation
As a volunteer.
For a number of years, but now you've taken on a new role.
I am, yes. So it started in 2011.
Okay.
And the way the Jet Awards started was Johnny Rogers was literally reading a magazine. And there was an article in there about the best players at every position. And they all had an award, right? We all know.
Yeah.
Best offensive lineman, best
Right.
defensive lineman. And there was no award for the best returner. And so he's like, well, you know what? We could probably put together an award. And so he contacted NRG, the company that owns 1620 The Zone and all the stations there, and said, hey, I want to do this. And so we were kind of on the ground floor of it. And he needed volunteers to help out, and I chose to be the media coordinator. I'll go out and find people to vote on this thing. And then after 5 years, we'll get it passed to where we could be on the ESPN show and all that stuff. And so that's what I did. I started as the media coordinator as a volunteer. And for the first 4 years, helped get all the votes set up.
Right.
Got the people picked the person for the award. And then I left to go to the World Herald. And when I did that, Kevin Kugler, Damon Benning took it over kind of, along with Gary Sharp, and they were running it. And we didn't move over to the ESPN part that I wanted to do. And so after 4 years, I came back, took over as media coordinator again, just as a volunteer basis. And then last year, they came to me and said, we're going to actually hire an executive director. We've got a grant, a 3-year grant from the Lincoln Foundation, and we want you to do it. And I was like, I have no experience in this whatsoever,
Right.
besides the fact that I know the organization really
Yeah.
well and I believe in it. And then after about a year of going back and forth, and I loved my job at the City Papillion. I was enjoying that. I was the digital guy for them. Great insurance. That's a retirement. Insurance is huge. I got
Yes.
a kid who's my oldest kid has had more than 35 procedures.
Oh, wow.
And he is literally a 7-figure kid. That's how much his medical procedures cost.
Wow.
Like more than $10 million. But anyway.
So is that why the property insurance or the property taxes are so high in Papillion?
Oh, here we go.
No. So when you have a government organization like that, it's a different kind of insurance, especially if you have under 100 employees. But anyway, I didn't want to leave there, but they asked me, and I said sure. And so as of July 1st, I took over as executive director. In the last 3 weeks, I've just been calling people and setting things up, and all the things I wanted to do when I was a volunteer and I didn't have time. I do have time to do them now.
Awesome.
So I've been doing that.
That's
And
awesome.
to kind of tie this up for some of our listeners, we had a couple of young gentlemen on our show previously that were benefits of some of the things that the foundation does. Marquis and Caleb,
That's right.
you
Yep.
know, and they're
Yep.
aspiring comedians, and they got their thing going on mostly Instagram is kind of where I think they've
Yeah.
kind of found their niche.
So there's kind of two parts. So you have the Jet Award, which is given to the most outstanding returner in college football. And then you have the Johnny Rodgers Technical and Career Scholarship, and that started in 2014. So 3 years after the award started. And since then, we've about 100 kids total, or students, I should say, because the average age for our scholarship recipients is 29 years old. So these are people with second jobs.
Okay.
This is like a second career, or you're just getting back into it.
A lot of trades.
It's all about trades. That's what it is. It's about going to Metro,
Oh, I love that.
and you're into trades. So whether you want to be a plumber, you want to go to the Culinary Institute,
Right.
which
The
is
truck
outstanding.
driver, the truck driver
Get
that
your
talked?
CDL, Yeah, exactly, over at the gala. So you can do all of that. And what we do basically is we raise the money for that scholarship. It's about $10,000 for the 2 years for you to go to Metro and get those certificates in that associate's degree. And so we've been doing that now since 2014, and it's worked really well. Now we want to be able to provide more scholarships for people.
So, and it's a fantastic event. And my connection with News Channel Nebraska is I get to help with the production. First few years, I was kind of like the volunteer guy.
Yeah.
I'd just run the camera, just to kind of be around. But this year, I actually got to sit at one of the fancy tables. I actually had Eric Crouch to my right and our CEO to my
you
left.
moved on up.
Wow.
Nice, look at you. Yeah.
And, a former Heisman Trophy winner. Nah, Eric's a pretty good dude. He's pretty
Very laid
funny.
back.
But it's probably my favorite part beyond all the glam and the glitz and getting your picture taken with the young man from TCU. He was a great
Darius
dude.
Davis.
Oh,
He
was
is a really
awesome.
good kid. Yeah.
But all those guys have been that I've
It
got
has,
to talk to.
yeah.
You know, very humble. Being a return man, you kind of, you know, you got a different mindset. You know what I mean? And these are just phenomenal young men, and they're very happy to be there.
Oh, yeah,
you know
definitely.
that as well. But you actually have part of it where you're bringing a number of these recipients from the scholarship that have benefited, that are about to graduate, that have graduated. So you hear these success stories, and you actually put a face to where this money is going to, because those tables don't come free.
No, right.
You know,
The cheapest table is $2,500.
yeah. And
Table of 10
Oh,
for
yeah.
$2,500. Different companies buy them.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, so who buys these
But
tables?
You had,
okay.
you had a graphic designer, a young gal that just graduated, and she already had like 4 or 5 different interests in her. Like, it's really cool to see, and it's also in mostly trades. Like something that's finally coming back.
Yeah,
you know,
trades are-
manufacturing, all of it.
And you have enough people. So
yeah.
you go to one of the companies I'm trying to get to help out and do some social media stuff with is H&H, right? So they have Chevrolet and they have all the different dealerships. Well, they need mechanics, and it's a huge shortage. So if they help donate, we can get more kids to go to the trades, more mechanics come out,
There you
they
go.
fill those jobs. Same thing is true for any restaurant in and around Omaha.
Oh, yeah.
The majority of sous chefs and just barbacks and everything else have gone to Metro. The Culinary Institute is incredible there. They put out some really good chefs. And so you need to hire more people to work in your kitchen, whether it be the front or the back of it.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to get them from. So you donate your money. We put more kids in the scholarships. They end up going to Metro. They get their culinary arts degree. And then, we're just kind of like a big circle.
And the difference between having that degree from Metro or not is about $8,000, $10,000 if you put a number to it.
Yeah,
right?
and that's across the board in all of those different trades. The difference is about $8,000 the first year. So you go from having a high school degree to having an associate's degree, and all of a sudden you're making $8,000 more. But over the course of 3 or 4 years, you're talking about a person going from making about $12 to $14 an hour to making $25 to $27.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right. So all of
Okay.
a sudden you're making $45,000 a year, and if you're in a relationship and your partner is making the same amount, you can live pretty good on $90,000.
Yeah.
Whether you have one kid or 3 kids, you can
Yeah.
still do it pretty well. And so that's the goal. You want to not just help this generation, the people who are actually working, but you want to help the next generation. It's a better chance of your kids going to school. It's a better chance of your kids swimming if you swim.
Sure.
Simple,
Agreed.
right?
Oh, 100%.
Same thing's true of education.
Yes.
Yeah.
When people talk about, well, the opportunity's there, but if I don't see somebody in my house doing that thing,
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to do it. And so there's a whole legacy of people of color in general, or low-income people, not going to college, so their kids don't go to college.
Right.
You go get your associate's degree, all of a sudden your kid sees you go out and get that 2-year degree, it's a better chance they're going to go and pursue
Yeah.
a 2 or 4 year degree. And so we're helping, the goal is to help generations and generations. with
Yeah,
this.
and to just kind of backtrack it a little bit for our listeners, it's to me it's the Jet Award. So you are finding the best return man in college football for that year, but then you parlay the banquet and the gala all into one thing, and it's raising all this money for these scholarships that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And this last year it's never been bigger. It filled up Baxter Arena, the hockey arena.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, down there.
That's
at the Garden.
huge. So
Yeah.
what would be a number of people that came?
Well, we had over 2,000 people there.
Dang.
And this year was the most. I think we raised $375,000 for the year. So that's donors,
wonderful.
people buying tables,
Yeah.
just individual people giving money, giving $100, to it on the website. And so this was the most we've raised. But still, $10,000 for an associate's degree. So every kid we have in the program, every student we have in the program, that's another $10,000. Adds up pretty quickly.
And you're getting up to around 100 students right now.
Yeah, right now we've had completing their degree. We had 94 students that have completed their degree since 2014. We've got another large number that are at the school right now and will be completing their degree, whether it be this semester or next semester. So we'll be way over 100 very soon.
God, that's awesome.
That is
It hasn't
awesome.
been around that long.
2014 for the scholarship, the Johnny Rogers Career and Technical Scholarship. And it started off pretty slowly because at the beginning you have no money, right?
Yeah.
So maybe one or two students are going to Metro.
Yes.
Then it goes to where it's a dozen or it's 2 dozen or like we've got up to now where it's 94 that have finished and completed their degree. So yeah, it started off very slowly, but it's growing. And again, that's one of the goals of why I'm there. So I can spend 24/7, 7 days a week working on this and raising this money.
And I think it's a perfect storm of having Johnny Rogers, a former Heisman winner himself,
right.
return man, 2-time national champion for Nebraska, and then you also have just the Nebraska support. So a lot of those auction items that were there, those Eric Crouch signed helmet, you had the pipeline, all those offensive linemen, and signing
Rozier,
posts.
too.
Yes, and they're all come and help out. I don't know if you'd get that support and that many people excited about that type of event if it wasn't Nebraska. Now I'm on my soapbox here, but
imagine if one day, again, I've been doing the media coordinating for most of the years of the 12 years, we had one finalist who was from Nebraska. One finalist, one person who made the final 3. You know who it was?
Oh man,
Andy, come on. I believe in you.
I want to say DeJuan Gross, but that's too
No,
old.
that's too old.
Yeah, it's way too old.
2001. No.
I know who you're talking about.
was it?
DeMornay
Pearsonell. He's the only one.
See, I knew it.
So that year, going 2011, 2012, he was the only one. That's the first year, and we haven't had anybody else. So imagine if this award, if there was really a reason to give the most outstanding returner to somebody that actually goes to Nebraska.
That would be sweet.
What the event would be like.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty incredible.
It would be.
So I think what you should touch on, excuse me, because a lot of our listeners are outside of Nebraska. Would you talk a little bit about who Johnny Rogers is? You know what I mean? Like what did he do, and then how did this come about?
Let me just talk about Johnny is a North Omaha kid. Okay, he was the second generation of the greatest generations of athletes to ever come out of Omaha. So you had a generation early where you had incredible stars, Gale Sayers, who at one point was the best running back in all of the NFL for your Chicago Bears.
Oh, yes, sir.
So you had this whole generation. Then the second generation was Johnny's generation, which was like 1967, 68, right? Johnny goes to Nebraska after being drafted in the NFL, in the Major League Baseball by the Dodgers, but chooses to go and play for Bob Devaney. There was a struggle for African-American kids to go to Nebraska at that time. There really weren't any black.
Why was it?
No black girls there.
Oh, okay. So the guys
So-
didn't want to go?
They didn't want to go, and there was nobody like them.
Yep.
Gotcha.
That they could go there and be with. There were no black
That's the most
fraternities.
honest answer you will ever hear.
There wasn't. And so Bob Devaney, in all his brilliance, is a very smart man, started recruiting young African American women to go to college at Nebraska for this, and also that helped eventually get black fraternities and sororities there as well, which
Okay.
helps with just being like you're at home.
Yeah.
So
right.
that process happens. Johnny decides to go to Nebraska. Tom Osborne, who was the offensive coordinator at the time, said, "We have a lot of talent to be great. Johnny Rogers make us a national championship team." And he was right, because just a couple years later, they win their first national championship. Then they went back-to-back national championships. Johnny wins the Heisman in 1972. And then after that, Johnny didn't want to go to the NFL because the CFL actually offered him more money. Probably a mistake on his part, but it's fine. He goes to CFL. He's a great CFL player. tries to come back to the NFL, played for the Chargers, got injured, had a hamstring problem. But after all of that happened, after all of his football, he then went back to North Omaha, lives in the same area where he grew up.
Yeah.
And since then, he's tried to do a number of things to help people in North Omaha.
So he's still here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Local.
He still
Okay.
lives in North Omaha. He grew up.
Yeah.
There's so many kids I've talked to that said, when I was a kid, Johnny came to my school.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I went to an event, Johnny was there. They all say that.
I think even Caleb said, "Oh yeah, Johnny lives down the street from us."
He does, exactly.
You know, he's still up in North Omaha.
Yeah.
And for the folks that don't know, North Omaha is a predominantly black part of Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah, it's
right?
a small area. So it's if you ever have a chance to read a book about Omaha, you want to know about North Omaha, you can read 24th in Glory, which is Dirk Chatlin's book from the Omaha World Herald. Of course, is left there now, but he writes this book over the course of 10 years. And we're so lucky that Dirk decided to write this book.
Oh, yeah.
Because Dirk interviewed. There's a great picture that just popped up a little while ago on my phone, and it's got a picture of Bob Boozer, who played in the Olympics, playing basketball, went to Kansas, great player, Kansas State, excuse me. You've got Gale Sayers in the picture. You got Johnny Rodgers. You got one of the greatest right-hand pitchers of all time in Josh Gibson, right? You got all of these guys. Johnny's the only one still alive. But because Dirk went out and interviewed all these guys, we have all of their stories.
Wow.
He saved all of these stories for us. And so 24th in Glory is all about this era starting in basically 1959 through the mid 70s of all the turmoil that happened there, all the civil. You had Robert Kennedy stop in North Omaha for a fundraiser. You had Martin Luther King come through there. Malcolm X was born there. It's just an amazing area of the city, but it's a small area. And if you know what redlining is, that was the only place that black people could live in Omaha. You had Bob Gibson. I called him by his brother's name earlier, by the way, Josh Gibson.
Yeah.
Bob Gibson was the best pitcher in baseball and could not live in Omaha outside of that area. Had to go get a house in Bellevue, and they had to trick them into allowing him to live there by having somebody else go buy the house. That, and we're talking the late 60s. It's not that long ago. I mean, it's 50 years ago.
Yeah, but
No.
And so that's North Omaha's story.
Yeah.
You took all these people. There was a Great Migration. You guys know about the Great Migration? The Great Migration is, so needless to say, it wasn't a great place to be in the South as an African American in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. You had Jim Crow, you had all these different things. And so families decided, I'm going to move someplace. Many went out west and grew up there. But many came to the Midwest because we had all these packing jobs. And these packing jobs paid well, and you could live with your family there and do well. So a bunch of them moved here. That next generation after those parents, those kids were the Bob Gibsons of the world, were Marlon Briscoe, first black quarterback in the NFL. All of those guys ended up coming from someplace else because of the Great Migration. And so that's North Omaha. It's a small little area that's a couple miles wide and deep, and all these great players came from there.
And
And
that
so
book, book is phenomenal by Dirk. He's a longtime writer for the
incredible.
World Herald.
Yeah.
He's retired from the World Herald, but he went out and got these stories, and he paints a picture just in his writing. Like, could you just imagine going to a Sunday pickup game in the afternoon, and there's Gale Sayers throwing the ball to Bob Boozer, and if you do a little homework on these guys, like, oh wow, they're not just good for Nebraska or good for the Big Ten. No, they're at the tippy top of the NFL and NBA. These are phenomenal
And baseball,
athletes.
all three of those sports. Yeah.
Bob Gibson, probably about a 3 or 4 year stretch where he was the best pitcher in baseball for the Cardinals.
1.12 ERA.
Oh, wow.
He
They
single-handedly
had
won
to
their
lower-
World Series.
They had to lower the
Wow.
mound. They lowered the mound because of Bob Gibson.
Yeah.
Because he was so dominant, they had to lower the mound.
Yep.
Yep.
So that area that you were talking about of the city, the city itself had defined this space?
Yeah, well,
That's-
see, the redlining wasn't legal,
Okay.
but it was understood.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
A
Yep.
realtor wouldn't sell you a property outside of that
Gotcha.
area.
Okay.
So it's just the way it worked. And
Yep.
it still exists in many places in the country.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
difference is that we're now redlining districts for voting. That's the thing now,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
gerrymandering. So that's just the way it was.
Yeah.
It allowed them, though, and Marlon Briscoe's a little outside of it. He was actually in South Omaha, but his dad also worked at the packing plant. It allowed these kids to compete against each other, and it made them better. They talk about this. They talk about going on to this park. And you mentioned some of the names, but you've got older Gale Sayers, a younger Johnny Rodgers, a younger Roger Sayers, who at one time was the fastest man in the world for about this long before he got hurt and couldn't go to the Olympics. But you had all those guys playing each other and making them better, and that's why the greatness happened because they all steel sharpened steel.
Sure,
it
yeah.
made them all better.
It was a phenomenal. It's a
great
great
book.
book.
It's
It
a really
really
good book,
is.
yeah.
Yeah. But
Interesting.
so yeah.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
a
have to look that
little
up.
history
24th
lesson
and
on
Glory?
24th and
Omaha.
Glory. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
24th and Glory.
And that picture on the front with all those guys, the sad part is, like I said, the only one left is Johnny Rogers.
No, can I ask how old is Johnny Rogers?
I would say Johnny is probably 76.
He would have
Okay.
been 23 in about 72.
Well, if you said he was
1972,
in
he'd have been
college,
23.
yeah,
He'd
at
been a
68.
senior.
60,
Okay.
I think about
College.
68 he'd be right now. Maybe 69. He just had a birthday. I believe his birthday is like July 6th.
I'll tell you what,
Something like
his
So
smile still shines.
It's still the same.
Oh, man, like
Yeah.
this guy.
And he has these sayings. They're always the same, but it's still the way he says them. Like every day is game day, not
Yeah.
every other day,
Yes.
which is true.
Those kids said that on that podcast.
Did they really?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Anything that you do by yourself isn't big enough. I mean, he's got
Yeah,
those sayings
he
that
does.
and they're all true. And he always uses them, and the kids pick up on them.
Yeah.
Now, does he come into the workplace then here and there? Do you ever see him?
Oh,
much?
see, the way it works, so
Okay.
I'm actually working out of Denny. It was created by Denny Drake, Coach Reed, who was a longtime coach at Central, coached both football for a number of years, and then became a golf coach, and coached probably, I'm just going to throw a number, 20,000 golfers over his time as a golf coach.
Okay.
We're talking 50 years of being a golf coach. So there's Coach William Reed, there's Denny Drake, who's a businessman, and Johnny Rogers. Those are your kind of your four. Denny is still on the board. Denny has an office, 117th and Arbor, right off of Center Street, and that's where I work out of.
Okay.
But I see Johnny, like, tomorrow. So this is the life of an executive director, okay? This is fun. I find it to be hilarious because somebody asked me to do something tomorrow, and I send them my schedule. So I have a 9 o'clock meeting where Johnny's going to be there.
Okay.
Tim Clark, who is with Metro Community College, who is kind of in charge of that aspect of the program, and a couple other people we're going to meet. And then at 10:30, I'm going to meet with Catrago. I don't know if you know who they are. If you ever go to an event, a fundraiser, sometimes they'll have the virtual paddle raise where
Oh.
people will be donating money and then like a star or a heart fills up and their name will go by and it gave $20.
Oh, okay.
So they're the company that does that.
Okay.
So I'm going to meet with them about trying to get that done during the
Okay,
gala.
there we go.
And then I have a Let It Fly pod that I do
I love
with Doug
that.
McDermott that I tape at 11:30. Then at 1, we have a meeting at Baxter Arena talking about the contract and what we can do at Baxter Arena. Then at 3, we have a board meeting, the Jet Award board meeting. And then Tom Chattel and his beautiful wife Jen are having their 25th anniversary. And so I'm going to that at 7.
nice.
So that's my schedule for tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And so I'll see Johnny like 3 times tomorrow at 3 different events as part of the schedule.
Man, I thought I was busy.
I was going to say, it's nobody's fault, Michael, that you're such a workaholic other than you.
Oh, I've always and I love it. I don't like we joke about it with my wife all the time. If I was doing one thing,
Yeah.
I probably would go crazy.
Yeah.
But-
So you like to juggle.
What would
Yeah.
Johnny say? If it's just you can get it done.
It's not big enough. It's not big enough. And we're getting ready to start another podcast, by the way. So, yeah.
Well, the Let It Fly one, I wanted to talk to you about that off air because I love that. And Josh Jones, right?
Yeah, Josh Jones.
Yep,
Josh,
yep.
yeah.
Omaha Central guy.
And Josh is learning to do the thing.
Yep. He's learning to do the thing. He's learning to do the thing. But where I was going to go with that, I just totally forgot because this guy is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
It's like been a dream of mine to have this guy on
Wait,
the
but
show
so
'cause I
you
thought
have
it'd be
another
good.
podcast, or
Oh,
you have a
my God.
podcast?
Yeah.
Yes, I have a podcast. So I
Just one, or can I add?
well,
like
I had
3,
so I was doing
4?
this one. My favorite podcast I've ever done
That's what
was called the first one first one away from the radio station was called Run the Damn Kitchen.
Oh,
Based off of, Run the Damn Ball.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so I did it for a year, and I wish I could still do it, but it just logistically and cost-wise, it was a little extreme.
Okay.
And so we would go to a restaurant, and we'd get a chef, and he would cook a bunch of things, and then I'd bring a celebrity who's usually a sports-related guest, and then we would sit around and just eat and talk about the food
That sounds
in the
awesome.
restaurant. It was
oh
awesome.
gosh,
It was
he
really
would
fun.
love that. He's a
We did-
foodie over
the
here.
Herd guys, right? It was
With the Hurrdat guys, yeah. And that was awesome. I really enjoyed that. But again, it's fairly expensive to do this thing. And so then Let It Fly came along. There's a sports bar in downtown Omaha. Mike Miller is a former NBA player.
Okay.
Who played for the Miami Heat, won 2 championships. Also played other places. Played at Florida, won a couple championships in college. Anyway, Mike Miller has this thing called Let It Fly. Initially was an energy drink, and then it was he has an NBA talent agency. He's got a bunch of stuff. But he opened these restaurants and opened a brand new one in downtown Omaha. And there's a podcast studio inside.
Nice.
And
pretty cool.
And the other 2 locations, by the way, in Germantown and in Sioux Falls.
Oh.
There's a gambling casinos right next to it.
Oh,
inside.
of course
So you
it's
walk
in
through
Sioux
the door
Falls.
and it's right there.
Yeah.
It's Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
And then the one in Germantown, which is outside of Memphis. And so we opened this recently, and we do podcasts from there every week.
And it's a good one. You guys get on really good guests, some good local talent too. And my youngest brother, who's the best athlete out of all of us, great basketball player, he was at tech school up in Mitchell, Miller's hometown.
Yeah.
When they were on that Florida run, when they won back-to-back titles. So he said the whole town was nothing but Gator. Gator,
I bet,
from
I
Florida
bet.
Gator.
Here's what weird. I always talk about how small of a state this is or a world this is. So he's from Mitchell, right?
Yep.
And the Corn Palace. My boss, the city Papillion, the city administrator, went to school with him. Went to school with Mike Miller. It's just so random.
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
things that you're like, how is that even possible? But yeah, she was from the same town. They went to high school together. Ended up working with her at the city Papillion.
Okay, so what's the name of your podcast? Say it again.
Let It Fly.
Let It Fly.
The name
Okay,
of the
so
sports
people
bar
can
is
check it out.
Let It Fly.
Gotcha.
And then the podcast is Let It Fly Show.
And before that,
Okay.
like Creighton, because they're kind of known for high-flying offense, they actually had the hashtag Let It Fly. I thought it just came from that.
No, they actually went to
Wow.
Mike Miller
What a
and
fit.
said, hey, can we use this?
Oh.
And this is before, Mike Miller's son now plays for them, Mason Miller, and his brother is an assistant coach on the
Okay.
bench. Before all of that, this is going back 5 or 6 years ago,
Yeah, yeah.
or 7 years ago, they actually went to Mike and said, hey, can we use this to Let It Fly? And he was like, sure, go ahead.
Nice.
So
But,
what do you cover on that show?
Pretty much whatever. I
Whatever.
mean, there's a
Okay.
lot of Creighton stuff because it's kind of financed by Creighton.
Yeah.
But we cover Husker stuff. Matter of fact, so tomorrow when we tape, it's going to be Doug McDermott, former Creighton Blue
Gotcha.
Jay.
Yeah.
But then after that, we're going to do a whole thing on the volleyball, the
Yeah.
new professional volleyball league that's starting.
Yep.
And then the week after that, we'll start having Huskers.
You were talking some high school kids out of Bellevue West last time I was listening.
Yep, yep.
Kalen, a big recruit that's going to go to Nebraska.
Daniel Kalen, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he's a stand-up guy. Where I really started listening to you a lot was The Bottom Line.
Okay.
Your show, well, that was on 590, right?
Yeah, that was with the Omaha World Herald.
World Herald.
Yeah.
And at News Channel Nebraska, we were starving for content. We were just starting up. It was like me and two other guys, or we didn't
Yeah.
have a big team. And so in the afternoons, we would just stream Michael's show the whole time.
Oh, that's
There
funny.
you go.
And like that would just, and I remember Eric McKay, I don't know if you ever met him. He's still our morning show host every single day, news director up there at our headquarters in Norfolk. He's like, oh, Michael Severe, I love that guy. Well, yeah, he fills up 4 hours for you every day.
It was such a weird thing because Boston was the first newspaper to decide, let's do a digital radio show. So it's just online. We're not going to broadcast it anywhere. This will be a way for you to be able to, when something happens in the city, whether it be a traffic jam or, what happened was it was the bombing.
Oh,
So
okay.
they started
Yep.
right before the bombing happened,
geez.
right? The marathon. And so you want immediacy. And yes, you could turn on your radio, but if it's on your phone, obviously you could go and do it right away. And so the Boston Tribune put that together. My neighbor was the managing editor of the Omaha World Herald. And he goes, can you start that for us here? Can you do a online digital radio show? And I was like, I guess. And so we basically built the studio, got all the equipment, hired a producer, and did all of that with The Bottom Line. And then the first couple of years, we were just we're just flailing a little bit. And then Joe Gans did one, former Husker, spent a season with me. And then we got on News Channel Nebraska and started doing it. And it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
And I think it was, saying this, I sound weird, but I think it was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
If you look at the way shows are done now,
Yeah.
where it's not just sports, right? There is news, there's entertainment, there's food talk. We were doing all that. We would have Sarah Baker Hansen on, who was our food critic. We would have whatever the big news story on, whoever the reporter was, they would come on.
Yep.
We would have health stuff on. Whatever was happening in the paper
Yep.
or was happening in the city happened on the
So
show.
everyone just copied you. I mean, you
No, I don't
were
think that was
like
the
the
idea.
trailblazer.
But it was an easy way to do it at the paper when you have all those people there.
Well, yeah.
And we trained them.
You had
know,
some
we taught 'em.
resources.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So was that like about what year would have that been?
So I first started there in 2014.
14. Was it called a podcast then?
No, well they had podcasts, but it wasn't called a podcast.
It's just The Bottom Line.
Yeah, it was called the Bottom Line Digital Radio Show,
Okay.
But I mean,
internet radio.
were you describing the show at that point like we do? Like, oh, we're on a podcast.
No,
right
we
now.
weren't. We were just calling it radio and
And-
saying
You
that it
were.
was internet radio.
Yeah.
Internet radio.
I wouldn't call it the best TV, but it filled 4 hours for
And we would
us.
do it. So
Yeah.
I had Sasha, who now is a bigwig at Hurrdat. She was my producer, and she would do We had video cameras in there, and then the radio aspect of it, and she would edit during the breaks the
Oh,
different clips and
gosh.
stuff, and then she would send them out, and so we would have like little podcast segments that would go out in the radio part of it as well.
Sasha's awesome.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's a straight shooter.
incredible
She could- yeah.
multitasker, and she did a great job as a producer. But it was before you really had a place to go and get a bunch of. It was basically Apple had podcasts, and that was really about it
Yeah.
at that point. But
Well, and to tie NCN, News Channel Nebraska, and the bottom line and the foundation back into it, you made a comment to Jimmy Allen when you were on his show a couple weeks ago, in that you would like to see more like getting the kids involved with the production
Right.
of the show.
because
So
we
like,
have so many.
yeah.
So West Side does a great job. If you're a
Oh,
person
they are awesome.
that wants to
West
go
Side.
to every game on a Friday night, all the big games, it's impossible, right? You can't clone yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But what you can do is, because all of these different, whether it be Papillion, they have their media, West Side has their media, Gretna does a media, and then a bunch of the programs in the OPS all run through one company, and they do theirs as well. So you can go on
Mm-hmm.
to YouTube and just flip back and forth,
And
or
watch
get a
the game.
subscription and watch and listen to these kids who are 14, 15, 16 years old doing what I couldn't do
Yeah.
until I was in college or even after college, and they're getting that experience now. So we definitely want to get those kids to come in.
I
and
think we had
kind
some
of
shadow this last year. I think
Oh,
we
did
had
you?
a couple in the truck.
Yeah.
But West Side, that's the high school in
Yeah.
Omaha. They
West
do a
Side Wired, they're called.
Oh, they are
and they're
phenomenal.
really good.
And that young man, Jaden, I believe, was the first one to kind of take the
Mm-hmm.
reins and run with it. He's at Arizona State right now, just killing it. This summer, he got signed on with the Kalamazoo Grizzlies.
awesome. Wow, that's cool,
So
yeah.
he's traveling with them. Like,
Jeez.
like this dude is, and he was actually texting me like, if you want to make that Corn Belt broadcast a little bit better, you should get this and that. I'm like, you guys,
Oh my
you guys
gosh.
have
Yeah.
the equipment. Like he knows
he's
it.
telling you
yeah,
now.
Yeah, but I think that would be phenomenal if we get more kids involved. Not necessarily run the cameras, but be there with us, follow it, get in the truck. I think it's a great experience, and it's another way for the foundation to actually fill kind of its mission statement.
Yeah, we want to have that. And then I want to be able to give tickets away to as many high school kids as possible.
Oh, that'd be cool.
These high school kids come and sit in the stands, right? It's like, I think it's a $15 ticket to sit in the stands, which comes with a meal, by the way. It's like a sandwich and chips.
Really?
Yeah. So you sit in the stands and you have a chance to watch generations of athletes who you really don't know. Your parents know them. You know, it's funny because that was a special one because it was Johnny Rogers' 50th anniversary,
Yep.
right, which is huge. We had some great Legacy Award winners,
Yeah.
which were wonderful as well.
Yep.
And you had Kellen Winslow, who was a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest tight ends of all time.
Oh, my gosh.
Standing up there talking.
He was so good.
And you have all that. And it'd be great for these young people to be able to watch that. And a lot of those people they're watching are from Nebraska.
Yeah.
Or played for Nebraska. Or played against Nebraska. So it'd be good for them. So I'd like to see us figure out a way to have a bunch of those high school kids to come as well and sit in the stands and watch the event.
I still get nervous sometimes when I do interviews, obviously, sit next to this guy. But Kellen Winslow, you're talking about one of the top 5 tight ends ever
Easily,
in the NFL.
Easily, yeah.
And I'm interviewing this guy on live television. I'm like, oh my
Were you
God.
shaking?
I held it together.
He
I
is-
tried
You got
to.
it?
So the great thing
He was,
about
he was good.
NFL films, and I think you agree with this, is that it makes moments that no matter what generation you're in, you remember. Kellen Winslow's playing in a game in 1983 or 82, and it's playing at the Miami Dolphins, and it's hot that day. And the Chargers go up 24-0 on the Dolphins. And the Dolphins come all the way back by halftime to make it 24-24. They play this incredible second half. Kellen has a huge game. 9 catches, 160 yards, blocks of extra point, right?
Oh, gee.
So in the
Gosh.
it then goes to overtime.
Yeah.
And remember, it's hot as all get out in Miami, even though this is December. It goes to overtime. He gets up and blocks another field goal. So the very end of this thing, as they're walking off, you got 2 guys carrying Kellen Winslow off the field. It's a shot captured by NFL Films that kids from 5 years old to 100 years old, right? Look at that and go, yeah, it's Kellen Winslow getting dragged off the field after playing that game.
And he's a tight end. He's not a defensive end going in there to block kicks all the time.
No,
but
they just put him in there specially to do that
He was
on that
unbelievable.
day.
Yeah.
So
And
what
that
was the
day.
final score?
Well, the Chargers win it at the end, and then they turn around. This is great. They go to play the Bengals the next week, and it's -20.
So it
Up in-
was so
They
hot.
did not
and then-
do well
I bet
against
not.
the Bengals.
I
They
bet
spent it all the
not.
week before.
They
and
spent
then
it all the week before, yeah. I don't remember the final score, but I think it was 41-38.
something like that.
I think it was like 41-38.
Okay, I just
final,
wondered
yeah.
if the gap narrowed even more, or
Yeah, it just
spread
kept
out.
back and
Yeah.
forth, ended up going to overtime. It's one of the longest playoff games we ever had.
No, you guys have done a phenomenal job with the foundation, bringing guys in like Kellen. I mean, and he was a straight shooter.
He was.
Like,
he was.
oh,
He had a
man.
line where he said, got recruited by Nebraska. He goes to Missouri. He said, the problem was I had too good of grades to go to Nebraska.
To a Nebraska crowd.
Oh,
And everybody
shoot.
kind of laughed, but he was good. He was very good.
Yeah.
He was very much a straight shooter, as you said.
And made time for all the kids and autographs and everything.
Even Tom Chattel,
Yeah.
who's not a kid, but went to school at Missouri, covered Kellen Winslow when he was in college,
Right.
is walking around with a backpack with a jersey in it, like trying to stalk him, kind of. And I'm like, would you like for me to go up and say, hey, Kellen, this is longtime columnist Tom? He's like, no, I got it. And I just watched him kind of follow him around like a little puppy dog.
Oh,
it was
yeah,
very
yeah.
funny.
It's funny you mention that. I forgot all about that, but he was doing that because I was trying to snag him for the
interview?
interview.
Yep.
Yeah, so
And Tom
funny.
Chattel's a longtime sports writer for the Omaha World Herald.
Sure, yeah.
And I mean, he's a big dog in his own right, But
Exactly. And the fact that he had covered Kellen when he was in college,
That's
working
pretty
there in
good.
Missouri was pretty cool.
That's pretty good. So, how can folks get involved or help out or donate to the foundation? I mean, and Jimmy Allen also mentioned this, like you actually know where the money's going.
Every bit of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, we didn't have any employees, and even now, my salary does not come from the foundation. It comes from a grant that we got out of the Lincoln Foundation. So it's not even a part of it. So every dollar that comes in, 99.8% of it. I mean, we pay, occasionally an IT person who comes in.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we're redoing the website right now. It's thejetaward.com. Redoing all of that right now. Of course, we have to pay some money to bring some of those people in.
Yeah.
We fly the winner in, put them in a hotel. We bring that during the gala time, we're actually spending money. But everything else is going to scholarships. That's why every dollar goes towards a young person, whether it be or even an older person. We have from 18 to 75 is our oldest scholarship recipient. So
Pretty cool.
so almost every dollar is going towards those scholarships.
So when you talk about those scholarships, how are folks selected?
So you have to be. It's developed over the low income. Is kind of the phrasing for it. So it can be at risk, low income. But really, so many people fall under low income because of the way the income restrictions are. I was talking about this with my wife the other day because we want to get more military people involved. You have all these people coming back from the military, and you get amazing experience, whether it be basic training. From the first day they hand you that green book, the Bible of the world that tells you everything about being a soldier, to getting out or working in permanent party or whatever else. And you get out and you're kind of like, what do I do next? Because there's nothing really like being in the military.
For sure.
So what I want to do is, I want to get some of those guys and those women and get them into the trades because I think they'd
Yes.
be great at it. They'd
Yes.
be wonderful.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
so part of the idea I've had is that we want to get a lot more of those veterans into our scholarships because when you don't make a ton of money in the military. There was a point where I was stationed at Fort Rucker where I had food stamps. I got $15 of food stamps a month to be able to supplement the amount of money I was making. And I was TDY, which is you get extra money for being away from permanent party. And so we would love to have a lot of those people end up in our program and be able to go and get trained in the trades because I think they'd be great at it.
Yeah. I mean, Ben, you have always said that. It seems like that's something that,
The military stuff has
Yeah.
always been very interesting to me. I wasn't in the military. My grandfather was, my brother is, but I see those kinds of same things that you're talking about. And I was just looking up this note here that I had wrote down because I heard on a news story the other day that 24% of current service members are food insecure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you think about that,
People that
and
we're
That is so
relying
sad.
on.
right.
If you're married, you get a little bit extra money because you're married. You have a couple of kids. You're probably living in base housing, which
Yep.
is not great on many of the bases. And like you said, they're food insecure. And then on top of all of that, there's a depression factor. There's
Sure.
the
Yep.
mental illness that happens with soldiers. We have so many soldiers committing suicide.
Yeah.
I'm part of the
PTSD.
50-mile march group where next month we're going to march from Lincoln to Omaha, and we raise money for a number of organizations that benefit military veterans. But one of the big ones is simply making sure that these people have call 988 if you
Yeah.
feel like you're struggling, have a place to go, be able to have housing, to be able to have. It's one thing to have housing; it's another thing to have a bed. Another thing to have a sofa,
Sure.
microwave. Well, that's provided by Moving Veterans Forward. Over 2,000 veterans have gotten that. So we're trying to make sure that everything these veterans need after taking care of us is taken care of. We say they served us, we march for them, and that's the goal. And we got to figure out a way. And one way to do it is to get them in these trades and get them better jobs.
Yes.
With our business, and it's kind of a side story, but what we do with a lot of these different farm brands, and we're involved in the agricultural community. There's a couple of organizations that we've worked with, one in particular that does what you're talking about, but gets these guys, these service members, into farming. So they give them, these dollars that they need to go train on whatever it is they need to train, or maybe go buy a tractor, or have this money to go invest in some land, or whatever the thing may be, but to get them into agriculture.
Nice.
And I think the thing is that these guys, they come out of the military and they had this purpose. They had this assignment. They had this thing that they did that made them. Yeah, this mission. Exactly. That's what it is. And then they get out, and then the mission isn't there anymore. Yep. And something like agriculture, they start finding the mission again. The mission is to feed people. The mission is to take care of the land. Whatever it is. And a lot of those guys really connect with it. So I think it's right on.
That's that old parable, right? You want somebody to be successful, you don't give them fish, you teach them to fish.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same thing there. If you can get them in agriculture, there's a bunch of groups. There's a group for NFL referees.
Oh my gosh.
Where they're training soldiers to become referees because there's just a shortage of people wanting to be referees. And who can take it and yelled at?
Damn.
Former soldiers.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I've never thought of that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
Especially around here, I just thinking about finding a niche or whatever. Applicators, spray guys, like there's a shortage everywhere, right?
Yeah, really.
There's a shortage of everything. And there's a crop duster in our neighborhood, a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, man, I bet there'd be a lot more out there if there's more pilots.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And where's a good place to get pilots?
Yeah, and don't forget the pilot in Independence Day was a former
There you
military
go.
guy who was a
that's
crop
right,
duster.
yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm back.
Yeah, he was.
That's right. So what with the scholarships and the foundation and that, obviously the focus is on trades.
Yes.
And why was that decision made? Do you know?
That was because Johnny went to high school at Omaha Tech,
Okay.
which was a high school trade school.
Okay.
Which is
Okay.
now, that building is now the headquarters for Omaha Public Schools. But that's what kids that wanted to go into trades, they went to Omaha Tech. And Johnny went there and started looking at the amount that a plumber makes, the amount an electrician makes, the amount a truck driver makes. And he said, why are we trying to force kids to go to four-year universities and get all this debt when we could just be sending them to Metro and getting them a job that's going to pay much more money and without having all the debt? And so that's why he decided to do it that way.
And are a lot of tech schools 2 years or some of them 4?
The associate's degree
yeah.
many times is 2 years.
Right.
Sometimes you have to go to get more certifications, right? But for the
For
most
different
part,
trades.
after 2 years, which
Normally
is
that's
basically
it.
costs about $10,000, you could then become an apprentice as a plumber. Or like that truck driver,
Yeah.
he got his CDL, started driving for a company, and within a year had enough money raised to be able to buy his own truck.
He was,
Dang.
yeah, he gave his acceptance speech, or not acceptance speech, but gave his story, and he straight up said why he was on stage. In 1 week, I plan to have my own truck paid for. I'm going to be driving for myself.
Yeah.
Man,
How cool.
Yeah, 1 year out.
we've again back to agriculture because that's kind of what we know. There's a couple of dealership groups that we work with, like John Deere dealership groups that have 8 or 10 locations, and they are giving scholarships to kids to go study to be diesel techs, and then they're bringing them into the to the fold in their dealers.
Nebraska Community Foundation does that in individual small towns to get kids to either stay or people to move to small towns because so many of our small towns are getting to the point where we see it with the dropping down to Class D or whatever, right, in
Yes.
sports.
Yeah.
But so that's the thing that Nebraska Foundation is doing, Community Foundation's doing now, is they're giving money to these towns to encourage kids to be interns, to learn those jobs, to be able to come back and live in small towns.
I'm a big supporter of the trades. I think it's awesome. I mean, I went and did an undergrad in business and whatever, and that's fine. But where I find my most enjoyment is working with my hands, and building things and fixing things and those kinds of things. And there's a lot of people out there that do as well, and they could be really good at it. They just need the opportunity.
Well, as long as people are around like me who don't want to fix the stuff and is willing to my wife is like, I'm going to put in this little keypad in our back door. And I'm like, hire somebody. It's going to cost $75. So I can do it myself. Well, It works.
Yeah.
Kinda. You pull the door right. You know, we got one put on the front door. You know, we hired somebody to do it.
And it works
It
well.
works better.
It works great. No problem. So I believe in hire people that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because there's a great show on one of the home improvement shows and networks where the whole show is about people trying to do a project, it failing, and then bringing someone in to fix the project.
Right.
That's a whole institution.
You're back behind. You're behind the 8 ball even more.
Yeah.
I want to hire that person originally.
Yeah.
Bring that person in to come do it, so
Right.
I'm not going to mess it up, right? So as long as people are around like me, they're going to have jobs.
See, and I went to hair school, so that was trade.
The number one
So.
non-college degree for a woman or job for a woman is hairstylist.
Mm-hmm.
And then number one overall with a degree is social worker.
Oh.
So either
I
you
would have not
be a
picked
social
that.
worker with a degree, you'd be a hairstylist, and they both pay. Well, hairstylist pays much more than a social worker. I say that as my wife's a social worker. So, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's
we're
interesting.
fans of trades
Yeah,
for
trades-
sure.
Oh,
for
definitely.
sure,
And
100%.
it's so easy if you're committed to learn it, and then the need is so great. I have a friend of ours who's down the street, who's a plumber. He's always working. He has to say no to jobs.
Yep.
He's
Yep.
always working. And $25, $30. You call him on a weekend? Ridiculous. I'm
Right,
just going
right.
to
Price
Yeah.
goes up.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so as long as that's there, and that's why Johnny wanted to do this, and that's why we also look and we hear from businesses constantly, we don't have enough of this. We don't have enough of that. So we're trying to make sure that we supply the thing that you're missing. And that's why we go to those companies. Werner Trucking is one of our sponsors.
Yeah.
Omaha Steaks, all these different banking companies. That's why we go to them. Because we say, look, if you give this money, if you donate this money, we're then going to put kids into school that when they get out, they'll take those jobs.
No work for
Yeah.
yeah.
It's the way it works. It's a big circle of life.
Makes sense.
So with the new website, is it still the same address? Where can people go?
Yeah, it's just the Jet Award, thejetaward.com.
Okay.
And we're just kind of tweaking things. We got hacked, obviously, like everybody does. Got hacked, and so we're fixing that, and we're adding stuff. The overall, it's the Jet Award Foundation on all the social medias. I had to start all the new social medias because they let them just sit there and no one knew the passwords or anything.
Right.
So whether it be Instagram or it be on Twitter, Threads, or if it's on Facebook, it's all Jet Award Foundation now.
Okay.
You can find out more information there. But you can go to the website. It is thejetaward.com. It's being rebuilt. It still works, but it's being rebuilt. And that's where you can donate there if you want. And just find out. We have charts there that show you how many people have gotten scholarships, the trades they're in, the average age, which I mentioned was 29.4, which is continuing to go up. And we have all those stats there to see exactly where your money's going.
It's fantastic.
It's pretty cool.
It is, man.
And if you're just like a sports guy or whatever, it's also interesting seeing all the past award winners, all of it. Like it.
Yeah, we've had some
it's
real
It's a really
success.
cool
Yeah.
combination of so many things coming together for just a fantastic.
Christian
cause.
McCaffrey was here.
Yeah.
One of the best players in the NFL, won the award and came here.
Yep.
Ty Montgomery, longtime NFL player. Like Tyler Lockett. Because I'm thinking his brother came and got the
Yeah, right.
Legacy Award.
Right,
But
yep.
yeah, or his nephew, actually. His nephew. So you have this in Lockett family. There's like 5 of them, including their dad, John Lockett, who all were involved in the NFL. But Tyler Lockett, who plays for the Seahawks, won the award as well. So we've had a lot of even Marcus Jones, who won last year, was one of the best defensive players in the league last year. He did something that hadn't happened in like 100 years. He returned an interception for a touchdown, caught a touchdown pass, and ran back a punt for a touchdown.
Was he the young
All
man
in
out of
one
Houston?
season.
Yes, out of Houston.
yeah.
Okay.
He's the one that in a game.
Oh, in the same
He plays
game.
for the Patriots.
Oh.
Yeah, he plays for the
Oh.
Patriots, and
That's
they
a-
drafted him.
That's even better.
Such a typical Patriots pick. God,
It was a great pick by them. But we've been pretty lucky with the guys that we've, and we hope Darius Davis has a great career as well, who just won for this last year. Yeah.
And this event happens once a year, correct?
it's
Is
April.
it always?
The next one
okay.
is April 4th.
April.
2024. It'll be at Baxter Arena. Just put a save the date out. We're obviously not selling tickets for it yet. We've been making different announcements on who our guest speaker will be. And of course, we won't know who the winner will be until we vote for him after December. But we're kind of getting the Legacy Award winners. Legacy Award, by the way, is a great idea because obviously our award only goes back to 2011. There are a lot of great returners going back to the beginning of football. So Coach William Reed has this system where he goes by year and finds the greatest who would have won the Jet Award that year.
Oh, wow.
And then gives them a Legacy Award.
Oh, I like that.
Same kind of
Yeah.
award, basically, to say, here's you would have won this in 1964, you'd have won this in 1975, or whatever.
So Deion Sanders is next year.
Well, Dion is somebody that we would love to have.
Right.
Dion, matter of fact, was one of 3 guys who were on the initial ESPN 150
Yeah.
for returners. Johnny was on there too. And we'd love to get Dion. Dion's very busy.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Dion
sure.
costs money. We'd love to have Dion back at some point for sure. My ultimate goal in this 3 years is to build a returners Hall of Fame in Omaha.
Okay.
So we have the greatest returners. If you're going to look and see who they are, you'll come into our Hall of Fame. And I'm hoping that we got like a pair of shoes from Deion Sanders and they're signed, and he comes back for that grand opening and is there and celebrating the return game.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think it's a cool setup, man. It's not like anything I've heard of before in terms of like how you guys run the award and then the money gets raised for the the foundation and the scholarships, and it all just, like you said, kind of comes full circle.
Yeah, and it's worked really. I think it's worked better than I thought it would.
Yeah.
And it's still so new. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah, we're not even 10 years old.
Yeah.
With the award, so next year it'll be the 10-year for Ty Montgomery. So we're hoping he comes back as part of the 10 years. But yeah, the scholarship's not even 10 years old.
yeah.
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 No,
It's pretty cool.
I enjoyed the heck out of it. I just offered to help out, on the News Channel Nebraska side of it when I don't know how we worked it out to live broadcast it, but I'm like, yes, I'll do that. Whatever I can do.
Yeah.
Get me down there.
So what happened was the former GM at NRG when it all started works for News Channel Nebraska now.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
that's how it all
Yeah.
ended up working out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, Andy.
Andy Rebeck.
I think with what we do with this podcast, obviously the name's called Common Folk, and we like to talk to common people doing cool things that a lot of people don't even realize, and this fits right in there.
Totally.
Andy set this up. I didn't really know what to expect, and I'm not as heavy into sports as you are, so a lot of those kinds of things I wasn't aware of,
Right.
and I think a lot of people that are listening aren't aware of either. And you look at this group in this small state in the middle of the country doing some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what it's all about.
We have the award for the best center, the Remington Award, which is based out of Lincoln. We have the award for the best interior lineman in the country, the Outland, based in Omaha. And we have the Jet Award for the most outstanding returner.
Interesting.
3 major awards,
Love it.
all right here in Nebraska.
Yep.
It's pretty cool.
That is
It
wild.
But we love football, so it's not a surprise
Yeah.
that we would have 3 football awards.
I
but
mean,
yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of cool. And
Now we
have,
just need the
Go
state
Big
to.
Red. Oh, I'm drinking the
step it up.
Roulade. I'm drinking the Roulade.
Are
What else am I
you?
gonna
it's
do?
understandable. Listen,
Okay,
man.
okay.
I don't, no matter how
What else are
religious
you going to do?
no
I
matter
know,
how
you should.
religious you are, you've been to church, and at some point you listen to somebody and you went, "Wow, that guy, he really knows me." He did a verse from the Bible that makes sense in your mind or whatever.
Yeah.
Every time Matt Rule speaks in front of public, you feel that way.
He's the new
It's-
Nebraska coach.
It is
Really?
It's crazy. His dad was a
I haven't
minister.
heard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Have
his
you
dad
ever-
was a preacher.
I mean, he spoke at the Jet Award Gala, and how many times did he reference, being at? He talked about his family, how his family is this one side of Italians who are a little sketchy, right? Not every one of them is at every event because maybe they're away for a while, and then the other group, which is the group that is, the minister and all that stuff, and how the families have to come together. And he's talking about Nebraska.
Yeah.
He's talking about how these two groups, you got these old school people who won all these titles and everything else, and then you have the new school, and all have to come together in order to make Nebraska great again.
Yeah.
And so that's every time he speaks, you feel like he's
You
speaking
do.
to you.
Where'd he come from?
He was with Carolina Panthers
Yeah.
and got fired there. But
Oh.
before that, he coached at Baylor, took over Baylor coming off of probation because their head coach, Art Briles, was a horrible human being and allowed sexual misconduct to happen on his campus by his players. So they ended up being horrible. He takes over that program, turns them
Turned it
around,
around.
gets them to a Big 12 title game. Went to Temple before that, a program that's one of the worst in all of college football, and turned that around.
Except for like
Okay,
a
so
4-year
he's a
stretch that
flipper.
he was there.
While he was there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a flipper.
And it normally
Big
takes
time.
him 3 years, but I think even though they don't have a ton of depth, right?
No.
They have good enough players, in my opinion, in their top 22, top 30, to where they could win.
They
I would
could.
say 6 games.
They could.
But obviously, we've been waiting for 6 games for a while.
Right.
It's been, when you think back, the last time Nebraska was in a bowl game was after 2016.
It was. Oh.
Yes, a season where they started 7-0, went to Wisconsin, should have won that game at Wisconsin,
Should've.
lost it, got killed by Ohio State. In the end, they had a winning record. They won 9 games, but the next year,
Boom.
it was so bad that your coach gets fired. They bring in the savior. Obviously, the savior didn't work out, and now you got Matt Rule.
Will
Okay.
will the people in the organization give him the grace and the time that he needs?
I think so.
Because,
I
like you
think
said,
so.
you said something about 3 years.
That's what
and
it
I
has
think,
been.
And I think that's probably about right. And I relate that to one of my previous jobs when I got moved around and worked in different districts, and it was all about building culture.
Yeah.
And it takes time to build that culture, and it gets worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
So hopefully
What's
they'll get
funny,
that opportunity.
we make fun of the word culture a lot. You're talking about culture.
I'm a culture guy.
But it's not even, it's about relationships.
Sure.
It's about the relationship that Trev Alberts, the athletic director, has with his head coach. It's the relationship that the Board of Regents has with the program. It's the relationship the president of the university has.
Yeah.
It's the chancellor. And then it's the relationship that the fans have. And the worst thing that could ever happen is being apathetic about a program.
Right. Oh,
And
yeah.
that's kind of
That snuck in.
seeped in.
Big time.
And so
Yeah.
you get them on board. Everybody's on board together. That is culture. It's about the relationships. And I don't know if Nebraska can ever win a national championship.
Uh-oh.
Again, I don't know that. Even though we're going to 12 teams and have a better chance, I don't know based on where they are and how everybody caught up with them and the league they're in. The Big Ten's pretty tough. But I do know this: they certainly should be in the at least mentioned for winning the Big Ten. There's enough dedication, enough money spent here to where they should be mentioned.
And I think that's what we want. And you're originally from Louisiana, right?
I'm from all over, but that's where I went to high school.
Okay, so and just being born and raised in Nebraska, I actually how I equate Nebraska football, and we're getting off topic here, but fixing barbed wire fence out on the pasture on our family ranch, listening to a Husker game. That is Nebraska football.
It is
to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, like, you talk about culture. Like, I felt like I was part of it. The old
sure.
broadcaster back in the day.
Well,
"Man,
everybody-
woman, a child," you know.
Everybody went to Lau Brimser.
Yep.
Everybody, every single town, and you pointed out Ross DeZers. Every single town had a kid who played at Nebraska. Bob Devaney wanted that. That's why they went to every town and made sure if there was a kid good to play at Nebraska, he played there.
Yeah.
So you felt your city was represented.
Right.
Yeah.
And they did that. And they're doing that now.
That's huge.
That happened during the
Yeah.
offseason,
Yeah.
right?
He's got the top 5 kids, right? Top 5 recruits
Didn't
out
they
of
get
the
some
state.
from Bellevue and
Yeah.
Yeah, they got 3 from
Yeah,
Bellevue.
3.
2 wide
Okay.
receivers
Yeah.
and the quarterback. But even going back to last year, the first year he was there, because now you're moved on to recruiting 2024, but 2023, which was the first year they got there, he went out and his special teams coach, Coach Foley, went out to every single little town and showed his face at all the schools. And so many of those schools said, we haven't seen a Nebraska coach here in years. It's
Yeah.
been decades since one showed
Crazy.
up. Just to be able to say, when that player comes along, when Carter Nelson from Ainsworth, Nebraska, who plays 8-man, is all of a sudden really good, he chooses to come to your school, not to go to the other schools that recruited him, like Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal.
To
Yes.
accentuate
Yeah.
that, so I grew up in that Ainsworth area. That's where I grew up.
okay.
Tom Osborne was in our gymnasium doing a teammates function in Lynch, Nebraska. Tom Osborne at
Jeez.
the height of it. This was like in 1996. Like, can you believe that? But that's
wild.
that culture that you're
You had to
talking
do that.
about.
You had to do that. You had to go. Because you certainly can't lose your state,
No.
right?
Yeah.
You can't lose your state.
Right.
Now, you may occasionally lose a kid who just doesn't want to live here anymore, wants to get away.
Sure,
It's going to happen.
Yeah,
There's
that's
nothing you can do about that. But for the most part, you should be able to keep 4 out of 5. You should be able to keep.
Yeah,
It just should. And
100%.
that's what he's doing so far.
I think so. So I
Cool.
think the big red wave's coming back. I don't know.
okay.
I do love the roulade thing. That's a great expression. I like that. It's better than Calabrasca.
Yeah, way better. All
so,
right.
yeah, did you have any other questions?
No,
okay.
no, I
so,
think we got
like we do with most of our guests, we wanted to present you with a gift as well. So we appreciate you coming. This is a group that we work with, Handle Ben. They're out of O'Neill, Nebraska. So these guys make all handmade copper mugs and copper products.
Oh, wow.
So that's what's in there. You got a couple of
My
I think
wife
what they
loves
have.
Moscow mules.
There you
That's
go.
what it is.
Wow, look at
and
that.
this is the real deal. This isn't like the mugs that she would drink of at the bar, you
Yeah.
know, that are lined or whatever. This
Right.
is 100% copper handmade mugs put
They're
together.
heavy.
Awesome.
I want to quiz him here. From the land of Wyatt Lever.
I love Wyatt Lever. What about him? Oh, the town?
Yeah.
He's from, oh my God, not Wahoo. Wyatt Lever's from. Oh my God, I can't remember where Wyatt Lever's from.
Can we help you out?
It's kind of Irish.
I can't remember where Wyatt Lever's from.
O'Neill.
Yeah, O'Neill.
O'Neill, Nebraska.
Wyatt Lever's second cousin, sat across from me, Steve Lever, is the military writer for the paper, sat right across from me.
No,
Which
crazy.
is sad that I should know that. But
That's crazy.
yeah, O'Neill. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've seen them actually play in person.
Yep. So they have a big old. They are self-proclaimed Irish capital of Nebraska.
Yep.
Oh, awesome.
Yep.
Greeley kind of goes back and forth with them on that, but I'm from the O'Neill area, so I'm all O'Neill.
Yeah.
They got this huge St. Patrick's Day celebration. They do.
Yeah.
We even televise their parade. It's such a big,
awesome, yeah.
crazy deal.
Yeah.
They dye these horses green.
What?
Like they do it up.
They go all out.
And they decided rather than just paint a green 4-leaf clover at Main Street every year, they just poured green concrete. It's a permanent deal.
Oh.
Wow.
And then it started to fade, so they do make a thing of it where they repaint it every year and make it beautiful green.
Yeah.
For Wyatt Lever, they painted it red his senior year.
Wow.
Like, it was a big, like you're
That's
talking about.
awesome.
It was a
That's
big
awesome.
thing.
It's a
pretty
big
cool.
thing for that town. Of course, the most famous Irish person I know, Shaquille O'Neal. No, I don't even think of O'Neal
He's the
being.
biggest. He's the
I don't even
biggest.
think of O'Neal being Irish, but obviously it is. My one of my best friends, his name was Patrick McDonald.
Okay.
As Scott Patrick McDonald, about as Irish as you can get.
Yeah.
And he would always, every time there was a player that had any Irish, he'd always point him out. I'm like, why do you know this guy? He goes, he's Irish.
Of course I do.
I'm like,
There you
okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you very
So
much.
yeah, man, for sure. Obviously, you can see like they put a lot of thought into
This
that.
is really cool. The fact that it's packaged like this,
Yeah.
and I have to use this to get it
Yes,
open. That's
you
pretty
do.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So handlebend.com, they hand make those things and they ship them all over. So it's an awesome gift if anybody's looking for something to send. They aren't cheap, but they're worth every dollar.
They
They're
do straws,
awesome.
different kinds of cups.
Do they,
tons of different stuff.
Do they engrave them for people?
Yes.
So what you'll find when you open that package up is that it is, I guess you would call it like kind of embossed with our logo from the Farm Focused brand.
Yeah.
But they do custom stuff all the
So
time.
like if you I was
Yes.
my wife, I can get her name put on or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's an awesome
Yep.
gift.
Wedding gifts,
Yep.
Christmas gifts.
Yep.
What's copper?
What
you know?
is it?
What
Oh,
year?
how many years? Oh, I don't know.
So I know wood is 5, which I always think is funny because you're giving your wife wood for fifth one.
for the
6 is iron, I know for sure. 1 is paper. I don't know the ones around it, but one of them is copper. I think it's early on too. I think 25 is silver, 50 is gold, but I
Let's
don't know
see.
which one
What
copper
does it say?
is.
7th.
7, so after iron.
I guess.
6 is iron, 7 is copper.
Okay, there you go.
If
Yeah.
you're having a 7th anniversary coming up,
Check 'em out.
8th is
Handle-
bronze or pottery.
I've learned a lot on
9th
this
is
podcast.
willow.
Yeah, we got a
10th
lot of
is
directions.
10.
10 should be lower.
Yeah.
Copper's much better than 10.
Agree.
I always tell people,
think.
being a reporter for as long as I was, I have the information of an ocean, but the ocean's 1 inch thick. I just have enough to where I could talk about something for a second, but I got to get out.
Yeah.
So that's like,
Yeah.
Johnny Rogers, catch you later.
like my first story in Monroe, Louisiana. My first story I ever did was on irrigation. It was on gravitational irrigation, something they were just starting kind of in Louisiana because there was a shortage of water and they were trying to figure out what they were doing. And that's how they would flood the fields for the cotton and for the soybean. And that was my first story. They got these giant inflatable tubes that they would fill with water, and then they'd come by with a little pick
And just poke 'em.
and they would just go down the line. It was awesome.
So
It was
you've
my
got
first-
some agriculture background.
Again,
there you go.
it's a huge ocean, but it's 1 inch
Yeah.
deep.
We're gonna have to have him back.
Right.
Dive into this 1-inch ocean.
Yeah.
But that's how you break your neck. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yep.
Well,
Oh,
Michael,
that's
it's been
good.
fun,
It
man.
was so
Thanks,
good
guys.
to
I
meet
appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah, appreciate
Yeah.
Andy putting it together.
I
and-
really thought I was getting killed. I mean, I'm
When
not
you-
gonna lie.
when you get down this road.
when he said, like, "Well, you got to come to Plattsmouth," and I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." And then he's like, "Well, it's about 2 miles from here in the woods." I was like, "Okay, sure." And then he starts driving. He's going over these hills. I'm like, "Okay, yeah." So I'm getting killed. That's fine. I got really good life insurance.
when you get on the last stretch of the road and it's like the truck's having trouble getting up it and
Yeah,
everything,
yeah.
you're
Like,
like,
there.
oh,
I don't
man.
know where we're going
This
here.
is legit. This
It's- hey,
studio
look.
is on the farm.
This
It
is amazing. It's an incredible studio. The microphones are great. Everything is set up. But I thought I was thinking about Irish. I thought I was Italian. I'm about to get clipped.
You thought somebody on a horse was gonna gun you down or something, didn't
I
you?
just thought I'd get clipped. I'd show up all of a sudden, and much like in Goodfellas when he walks in the room and he's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
yeah."
there you go.
So I thought it was going to happen. I was like, "What did I do wrong to Plattsmouth?" I always talk bad about Fremont, not Plattsmouth.
Plattsmouth is cool.
I don't agree. I
gosh.
used to come here quite a bit. So there was a huge case here that happened about 2008 or 9. And we had to come here every day for a week with the SAT truck with Channel 7.
Oh, wow.
And broadcast from here. And then, of course, when the young little boy, Gonzalez,
Oh, no. I thought you're talking
went
about
missing,
something.
his dad, who was accused of doing it, the trial was in Plattsmouth as well
Okay.
at the courthouse.
Oh.
And so we had to be there for that as well. And you first walk in there, and there's the whole thing for Starkweather. When you that's where his trial was. Charles Starkweather, the
Yeah.
famous.
Yeah.
mass murderer.
Yeah,
call him?
Cass County.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
out there.
Sounds
So, yeah.
bad when you say famous and murder. And
Infamous, I should say. He's not famous. He's infamous. But yeah, we came out
Yeah,
for that. And
I
I
gotcha.
always enjoyed when I came in. There was a little shack that had amazing catfish that was on 75. You had to get off and come back up.
Catfish Lake.
Oh yeah.
Is that? Yeah, it was delicious.
They
Had to been-
moved
It had
that.
to been right.
It was
Yeah.
so
Wasn't
good. It was
Yeah.
so good. So
Yeah.
any place there's good food, I will travel.
Yeah.
There we go.
Our last guest, a couple
Didn't like
episodes ago, didn't like catfish. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
She did it.
Yeah.
And they even had a tenderloin sandwich that was great, and they seasoned it with a Louisiana seasoning.
Oh yeah.
That they had in there. It was so good.
Isn't Catfish Lake still around? But they
They,
moved.
they moved.
Okay.
Yeah, they moved.
Okay.
Yeah, when we did our prowl, we did food prowls for the best tenderloin sandwich. They actually won our tenderloin.
Oh.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was it's a good size, but it was seasoned better
Yeah.
than any of the other ones.
I've never been there.
I love a good pork tenderloin.
Heck yeah.
It's not everywhere.
You
It's
can't.
not
I mean, whether it
everywhere.
be Iowa or Nebraska, everybody claims. I believe Indiana is where it actually really
Oh,
started.
really?
Yeah, but whoever gets it does it. Nebraska does it pretty well.
Yeah. No
Yeah.
doubt. No doubt.
It was great meeting you.
Nice meeting
Thanks
you as
for
well.
coming.
This is pretty cool the way you get to
Yeah.
set
man.
up.
Good
All right.
stuff. Anything else?
No, I think we did it.
All right.
We're
Well, thanks,
good.
man. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome.
All right. I'm gonna shut it down.
All right.
good.
Peace.
Later.
See ya.